Are there any questions that, Jerry?
Well, it's not so much a question. I just want to lend some support to this. That I think Michael talked about the environmental reasons, which to me are quite obvious, and even the national defense reasons. But I think just from an economic standpoint, we know that at any point there can be another Middle East crisis, or we're still in one, but it can get worse, and the supplies can get worse. And we are so dependent on what happens there as a community as well as a nation. And I think if no one else in the United States did it, we should still do it for the benefit of Needham. The cost benefit to it is great. It's great not only for businesses and homeowners, but for the town's budget as well. If we can cut in 5 years our energy costs as a community by 20%, that's going to be a big help to our budget. That's, as the members of the board know, the two fastest growing areas of our budget are healthcare and energy use. And so I think that this is the right time to do it. And I think we ought to move forward, and I think we're going to talk in a little while about next steps for that. I do have one question. We've already been doing some work in the town. Is there any way that we can utilize that in the baseline, start the baseline back on maybe 2 years or a year ago, with work being done that should show some of that progress?
You have the flexibility to set the year for your energy baseline, and I had talked with Chip about this a little bit, and he was, I think, looking at the 2009 because he felt the 2008 numbers weren't as reliable as he wanted them to be. He didn't have the full data, but you can. You're not starting as of next year. We have the baseline information. Kate and Chip and the team have done a great job, and I think he was talking about 2009 being the baseline year.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
I've had the benefit of previous discussions, and I'm very supportive of this as a goal. I think that one of the next steps has to be a significant public discussion about the people who are affected by doing work under stretch code, as an example, and also the people who have to work with those folks from the municipal side to make sure that when we go this route, we do it with a full knowledge of what all of the consequences are and make sure that we are delivering to our public a good process that is effective for them and is doable for the people who have to make it happen on the town side. So I think we need a lot of those discussions, but I think these are goals that we should be pursuing.
Any other comments? Dan?
Yeah, a couple questions. I mean, and maybe a comment at the outset. I mean, it would seem to me there are two major focuses that we do need to deal with energy conservation and issues for a couple of reasons. One is, and I'm only saying this to kind of bring the matter into focus, we need to reduce the consumption of oil products. Generally, it's a finite resource, and at the rate that we're consuming this, we're only going to see increased costs and instability and other problems that come out of that. And the second is people do have an effect on global warming. We know that, and there's reason to believe that the increasing amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is a factor in that, and that comes from humans consuming carbon products for energy generation. So, but having put that in that context, then you come back and say, all right, some of the things that we can do are substantive, some are symbolic, and some may not really make any difference. And there's a lot of that mixed up in our energy approaches. So I just have some questions about how some of this stuff fits together. I mean, we don't have any coal-burning plants in town, so the health impacts of this are a lot different, for example, than the way that you were laying it out. One is, the question is, you showed the financial aid that's available to the tune of $150,000 to $200,000 based on the current contribution participation, and then you talked about the number of communities that are participating in the state right now. Well, how many of those communities received that $150,000 to $200,000? Where are we in this curve of communities joining the program? And is that a clear enough question?
Yeah.
And do we know the
I
answer?
didn't know if you
Yeah.
wanted to do all the questions you want.
No,
to
just
answer,
that
yeah.
one right now.
That amount, some communities received a lot more. They use partly a population-based formula
Yep.
to determine how much to give to the different communities. So if you looked at the communities that were our size, that was kind of the range of the grant that they received from Green Communities. There's another round of grants coming this fall, and it's going to be going to the communities that will have just joined. Next year, there will be yet another round. And my expectation, my conversation with them, is that, you know, when people come into the program, they certainly expect them to get roughly that size of a grant. But as more communities come in, as we get past 58 to 70, 100, if we get to 100, they're going to have to start making some decisions. So they're going to be basing them on the quality of the projects. Again, I can't speak for a commitment, but when I talk to them, I think they believe that just slicing the pie thinner and thinner doesn't make sense. And so they look to going to a model where they will really be making some selections so that there's still a substantive grant to a community, but you know, your proposal has to be better than the other communities' proposals.
So you're going to have to, in addition to qualifying as a green community, over time, you're going to have to apply.
You do. You apply for these. You submit your project, and they approve the project.
So the funds are dedicated for projects. They're not unrestricted local aid.
They're not unrestricted local aid. They're in support of projects that can be energy efficiency, renewable energy. If you look at the ones they did, they were actually quite broad. Not
Okay,
a little
and you can
surprising.
get us a schedule of the distributions for this first round so that we can have a look at that. Because one thing that strikes me about this is, of course, the town is free to pick from this as an a la carte menu to do whatever we think fits best. Once you qualify as a program, you're buying a package of commitments, whether you want all of them or not. So the only, and you've talked about some of the psychological or social or political advantages, and I guess those can be evaluated by the community. Most people, a lot of our constituents, I think, really want to know are we better off using our own judgment or joining the program? One question I had is why, if it's a good program, why isn't it simply a statewide application approved by the legislature?
For the funds or for the program? Or?
Well, to mandate that the state become a green state and that we therefore adopt and follow all these things.
A great idea. I imagine, and you'd have to go back to the legislation that was done in 2008, the Green Communities Act, which attempted to provide, the Green Communities Act did a lot more than make the green community designation available. Provided a lot of relief from ways that you could contract with energy service providers. It increased the renewable portfolio standard. So there was a lot in that legislation. I can't speak to why they chose to do it this way. I think their view was that they wanted to get communities that really wanted to step up and make it available to them, provide some reward for them doing that. And for some communities, maybe it won't fit. But certainly, I don't think the state would have a problem if 300 of the communities chose to do it. I don't think they expect that to happen.